take a pause. InShalla. As-Salamu Alaikum and Ashe. I love saying As-Salamu Alaikum. That actually is what means may peace be with you. But let's just continue chatting about the moon, the phases. Just like in the Chinese theory, there's one. The moon's reality is the reality of our dreams. We can fly in our dream reality. We can be in two places at the same time. Even when we wake up, you kind of remember your dream state. It's that state or dream state that might be kind of in relation to a half a dozen different kind of interpretations. And actually, all of them are absolutely true. And we can divide the moon's phases in a variety of ways. All of them are meaningful. So just like in Chinese medicine or astrology, we come from the oneness field, through contemplation of two kind of interlacing dualities. We have this mystery of two. It comes from the Big Bang out of the void, which then leads us to kind of a meditation or a median on the mystery of the four. But before we finally arrive to the magic of number 8, which I'll get to actually next week. So I want to kind of go over the different dualities and the twos in the phases of the moon, because they're separate and they're dualistic and they're potentials of different perspectives in all of the lunar cycle. So in our natal charts, the first is a distinction between the waxing and the waning moon in our natal charts. And the second actually tells another story. It's the distinction between the darker and the brighter halves within the lunar cycle. And one of them's actually dominated by the darker side of the moon, and one's illuminated by actually the full moon. So there's just this blending of these dualities of those two, and it leads us to the creation of the four, and also in these quadrants of this lunar phase, we have this waxing and this waning upon this darkness and this brightness. So the new waxing to the first quarter, and then we have the first quarter waxing to the full moon, and then we have the waning of the full moon phase down and into the last quarter. And the last quarter is being like reabsorbed down into the dark of the moon. So the effect on the placement of the lunar moon on our individual psyche and any of also those four quadrants can be somewhat dramatic, but also it's useful and it's actually super easy to find. So in astrology, we have the elements of fire, earth, air, and water. And those are actually the foundations within the zodiac. And those four quadrants are the foundation of this theory of the lunar phase. And then we have the magic of 8. So that's kind of like our practical heart of this entire energetic system. And we want to kind of take in the consideration of these 8 phases. And actually, I want to explore them also into the pagan cycles. And even Buddhism is full of different references between the ultimate truth and relative truths. So it's pretty curious, and actually, it assists us in creating a distinction that's helpful. So ultimate truths cannot be perceived by our intellectual mind. They are only witnessed. Even the word is kind of wrong, but it's kind of this advanced mystical mind in relative truths, or what allows the rest of us to actually have the conversation. So they allow us to put these different conceptual ideas or handles out into the world. So time is a relative truth if you separate the I. The I is a relative truth. So everything is right or wrong, subjective or objective, evolved, unevolved, body and mind, me or you. But the moon is in every one of us, and we might call it intuition. That just naturally resonates with the ultimate truth of life. Just how in a dream, Tuesday might be after the day of Wednesday in a dream. And in the dream state or consciousness, it really doesn't affect or bother us. It's only in our morning when we wake up that it leaves us kind of scratching our heads and wondering what that even means. But our moon is never burdened by the idea to think. That's Mercury. Um, a Gemini moon might kind of do that, but not always, because it's a linear fashion of things. So it can simply feel the ultimate truth and actually be content. And also, one of the fundamental perspectives just in Buddhism, and I'm talking about the oneness, is that nothing is ultimately separate from anything else. So, you and me, yesterday, tomorrow, the mind, reality. So, everything arises out of other things and disappears or dissipates literally into other things. So, that means that nothing has any separate or inherent reality. So the oneness is actually this prime zero-ness. It's the ultimate one. It's the void, I think, in my visual perspective. It's the ultimate truth of our universe. So it's kind of hard to understand, right? At least in the solid kind of comprehending kind of way, that like the 2 plus the 2 equals the 4. The moon in us, literally, it's in us all and it sits easily with it. It's precious, but it's also mysterious. Like, I love the moon. Part of the moon is unity. So it's like it's got its own unifying field that's magical. I think all the planets actually do in correlation. So a waxing moon in orientation is in the doing. Where a waning moon in orientation is in the being. I'm going to show you a picture here so you can giggle at me later. I'm going to share. So I don't know if you can see that real good, but I did my best, right? So in theory, there's kind of a psychic impulse in between rushing out into manifestation. And then there's this abstract kind of even the ideals are struggling to become more concrete. And actual reality, this is just the first half of our human life. So this is actually pretty curious. So we have birth to middle life. So this is like the waxing moon. So this is where a psychic impulse is in recognizing our limits, our mortality, or even the brevity of life, the braveness, right? So there's kind of a humbling sense in this measurement. And in previously created circumstances, say, it kind of corresponds with the second half of life, midlife to dying and death. Where the waning moon, the waxing moon is more eager to move, like it's got this mood of forwardness and eager and enthusiastic, optimistic. It's trusting, active, positive, hopeful, vigorous, driving. It's lively, more fascinated with like the alien or the opposing other thing. It's concerned with the future, vitality, and even healthy. So the virtues of this is more faith and energy. But the shadow side of the waxing moon is kind of, it's naive, it's aggressive, gullible, self-possessed. It can be offensive or insensitive in the blundering, or loud and being foolish, or even heartless. It's kind of presumptuous or intrusive, maybe feeling a little more inappropriate or barbarian. Clueless. These are just some words. They might not apply to everybody, but again, it's kind of like the end. And it's like the young as well, but it's two sides of the same coin. So when the moon or the mood for waning moon is more reflective, it's more mature, it's aloof and cautious, more experienced or withdrawn, more seasoned or guarded. It's concerned with the past, but detached. It's more reserved or contemplative and compassionate, humble, patient, thoughtful. So the virtues here are wisdom and humility and even forgiveness. But the shadow side of the waning moon can also be depressive, resigned. It can be flat or passive, more kind of spiritless, where or unapologetic, fatalistic. You might feel defeated. So these are the opposing shadow sides of this part of the moon. Maybe you're uninspired, you are self-absorbed or self-pity party. You could have a vulnerability to illnesses. Maybe you're a hypochondriac. So people born under a waxing moon, their sole intention is to leap like Superman out into life, trust your impulses, take chances. And down the road, there's actually going to be some, we all have cosmic shipwrecks or even catastrophes, and that's perfectly okay. Because when we understand our faith inside of us, this exuberance that's kind of implicit in our waxing moon to literally survive. So most of them, it's where our soul is committed to actually embody this experience. And it's the essential evolutionary kind of strategy that happens for us. It's like laying out our karmic destiny cards out on the table. And the intention is actually to project these realities of our inner evolutionary state out into the fabric of the three-dimensional world and actually work on them out there. So it's kind of like how a cat is kneading on us, kind of stretching back and forth. Where with the waning moon, the intention is actually more subtle. And a lot can be worked out in our imagination without having to manifest whatever's happening concretely in this dimension. So this is where you might contemplate an opportunity. Say you want to steal something, and I'm just using that, or hijack something, whatever. So you might, in your mind, take the mental possession of the object of your heart's intention or desire, and then you can kind of get a taste or the feeling of this experience in your inner world, in your soul garden of the world, and reflect on it without actually having to manifest it. So, how does the idea of, say, stolen money, feel in the moment when you feel into that, or tomorrow, or even, say you did steal something and a year down the road, just still carry that feeling? Or even maybe we pass up on a chance at doing something shadowistic, I'll say, having, we learn our lessons on the inner plane, on this aspect of the moon, without actually having to live it out. So a soul that's born under a waning moon is actually more committed to examining reflective in life, like inside more before actually manifesting outside. So more is actually kind of, it's held back, and a lot can actually happen inside without much occurring in terms of visible worldly drama. And sometimes we can create that. So the soul intention is this digestion inside of us of these old experiences where we can cultivate more of kind of a observer's point of view. This is like the soul's harmonic, the ninth energetic center. I like to look through things before I work on people through the eyes of God energy, source energy, whatever you want to call it, because I'm going to get a different perspective through the eyes of God. And I always see that as more of a benevolent aspect that we all carry. Where the waxing moon is kind of heading, like it's heading on the word into the world of our physical reality, where the waning moon is withdrawing into those deeper realms of our consciousness. So with these realms, it's the wise ones that tell us to survive the death of our body, and this intuitive impression within us. What do I want to say? You may be, despite how some of this might sound, it's not that waning moon people are more spiritually involved and waxing moon people. It's just that the waning moon person is probably nearing the end of a cycle of incarnation. So they have like this innate wisdom that's actually a theme that's common. And there's already been enough physical outworld experience in their themes. So at this point, it's kind of this evolutionary process where you're contemplating and you're digesting of your soul's intentions on the other side. So I kind of believe that a waxing moon person typically is beginning new cycles of experiences, and they don't know really what they're actually doing. So they just kind of dive in to see what's happening. And actually, both sides of this moon aspects are very sacred, they're honorable. In a way, all of our souls kind of oscillate between these two evolutionary spaces. Um, you know, even over a variety of lifetimes, I would say. Then we have the dark half of the moon cycle along with the bright half of the moon cycle. Ding, ding. So you can see that, hopefully. I'm not real great at this, but I'm working on it, right? So in this dark half of the moon cycle in the hemispheres, they call them hemicycles, but so our soul actually, the impulse is inwardly, it's absorbed, it's contained, and it has this potential of radiance and kind of gathering forces. So the intention or the attention is focused on principles and archetypes. They're more transcendent, actually, in different kinds of perspectives. So this orientation of this inwardness towards inward consciousness, towards the realm of a manifestation. So it's this crazy subjective reality of the moon that actually penetrates into the ego mind in reality to where our sun is in the chart. And our sun is actually where we shine. That's like the sun is shining on us, where our moon is always reflective, but they all have these amazing personalities. I just, like I said, I'm a reflector, so I'm always reflecting on the different aspects of the moon. So this creates and it impacts strongly inside of us, kind of blurring the distinction between our facts and our emotions and reality and the and this idea or how we might interpret it. But getting in touch with our feelings is actually one of the most healing aspects, whether you're masculine, feminine, male, female, to do. It's our moon that actually can heal easier because we're paying attention to our feelings and we're not stuffing them under the rug or, eating food to stuff them in our inner bodies. But the mood in the dark half of this moon cycle is this transcendental. So it's this kind of abstract, kind of mysterious, self-contained, archetypal, I'd say spiritual principles, more idealistic, theoretically, but kind of hypothetical in the same way. So there's some introvertedness, there's this visionariness, there's also independent. And we have this isolation that is kind of more numinous or numinosity. It's charismatic, it's otherworldly, utopian kind of feeling. So the virtue here is just self-awareness, but in the shadow, it's this undergrounded or ungrounded aspect. You could be insensitive, maybe come across as insane or cold, disengaged, maybe a little fanatical. Those are shadow sides, unloving, even uncompromising. And everything has a shadow side. That's kind of what we work through. But the bright half of this moon cycle, in theory or in idea, this would be like our soul's impulse where it arrives in the world of external realities, projecting like a detail-orientated outward expressions of our inner nature out literally on the stage of the world. So this aspect has this hunger to engage creatively and to experience relationships in all senses of the world. So it's more orientated towards the cosmos, towards the realm of manifestation. And in this subjective reality of the moon, it's further from the ego mind in reality of our sun. So it's impacting us less strongly. So the mood here is actually more pagan. It's engaged, it's interested, it's caring, it's creative, it's more open and nurturing, social, kind of more curious, concerned more in being fascinated, more extroverted, romantic, inquisitive, hungry, sensual, even investigative, and even more adaptable. But the virtues of this cycle or this hemicycle of the moon, it's more openness to engagement, attention to others. But the shadow side is kind of overextended. It's more self-dramatic, overwhelmed, clueless, stuck, lost in worldliness, or overpowered. It's kind of like the deer in the headlights kind of a expression or feeling. So we actually all the time we live in two worlds, and there's nothing really mystical about that really, and it can actually easily be verified by anybody when we tune into our beingness. So even though there's this outer world of more or less shared experiences, what we are conditioned to call reality, there's this, what I want to say is there is in this inner world of our thoughts and our dreams and reflection of those more exotic states. So in a nutshell, in a way, the moon's dark circle, this hemicircle, refers to our attention to the inner world, and the bright hemicircle is attention to the outer one. So a person who's born under the dark half of the lunar cycle has this natural orientation to the inner world, where somebody born under the bright phase is to the outer world, if that makes sense. So a person born under this dark part of the cycle might be more sensitive, spiritual, a visionary, and, or on the dark side, self-absorbed, could be a psychopath in a way, less engaged or disengaged from other people's needs and pains, or, their full reality as human beings. They're not engaged in that. And a person born under the bright part of the moon cycle might be loving and creative, alive inside, could be materialistically consumed. I'm just thinking of somebody who's like, that's their whole sole purpose is the materialism, like they got to have the stuff, which is hilarious. But they're enmeshed in this desire, and it's endless, it's irresolvable, it creates personal drama inside of them. So the consciousness, which is cool, determines the actual nature of the expression of these configurations, like where it's creating those space coordinates I talk about in the astral realm. So this is like only a tool in the hands of our soul, really. It's really nothing more. But when these two divisions overlap, then it creates these the patterns of those four quadrants. So these quadrants are related to the four elements: the fire, earth, air, and water. I work with an elemental system of both in the world and out of the world, especially for grounding. I might get into that on Wednesday. I haven't decided. I'm kind of just going with my own inner flow. But the elements in these quadrants, they're actually the foundation within the system of the 8 lunar phases of the moon that I'm going to start exploring next week. So it's similar or kind of in the same way that these lunar 4 quadrants, the power, they literally power us up to kind of grasp into those 8 pagan phases, those lunar phases, and when the moon is waxing out of the dark. So it's kind of abstract and otherworldly, these qualities. And these dark phases, they ally with the outrushing emanation or enthusiasm of the waxing moon. So it's an active expression of just kind of an idealism that comes into play that we can muse about. But on the shadow side, it's kind of naive. It's insensitive to actually the needs of others or even to yourself, actually. So the first quadrant is of the essence of fire. It's waxing into the light. I think I have that image right there. There we go. I'm so hilarious. Me and my imagery. I don't know if you can see that very good, but we're going to go through this. Not all today because I'd be yapping forever. But the first essence, the first quadrant is, like I said, it's the essence of fire. It's waxing into the light. This is when we engage socially. It's fire. And so these concrete qualities of these brighter phases, they kind of ally with, outrushing enthusiasm of the waxing moon. So this is a spirit more of partnering, and you think about fire, it's co-creation. It starts to get on the rise. It seeks expression to crusade, service, or even a sexual union. So in its shadow side, because everything has two sides of the same coin, it's actually more destructive, it's conflictive. It creates the loss of our personal or our philosophical self, or the bearings to be moral, have morals. So the second quadrant is of the nature of earth. So it's the wanting out of the light. So this is when we're engaged, earth energy. It's the relationship orientated quality within the bright phases. So it's brightness, it's light in the creating relationships or allies, worldly or not, as far as I'm concerned. So these are more reflective. They're drawing qualities of that wanting mood, and they're in flow. So this is a more generous, caring, mature, and often it's more selfless spirit inside that comes out and rises. But its shadow aspect is more hopeless. It's enmeshed. It's inescapable. Earth, Earth sometimes can feel heavy, especially if you're a star being. So the third quadrant is the nature of air. It's wanting into the dark. So that's curious as well, right? So it's this is when we're kind of subjective, otherworldly. You have these transcendent qualities of the dark phases. You have an ally with the reflective, because the moon always reflects. So these are these withdrawing qualities of the wanting moon. So it all goes into a flow. It's almost, to me, it feels like if you were a surfer riding the waves of the moon, you're kind of flexing ups and downs. But they're both, there's this poignant sense of endings. There's this mystical sense of transparency, even of the world that kind of show up for you or myself. I'm kind of talking about myself in a weird way. But the shadow on this aspect is more madness. It's actually despair. And this fourth quadrant is of the nature or the essence of water. So next Saturday, I'm actually going to go into the mystery of the 8. We have the waxing, gibbous, the crescent, all of those and where they play in. So my moon actually is almost a full moon. So it's almost like I'm tottering between two quadrants. So it's pretty curious for me. So I'm going to go more into depth into those. So be sure to kind of look at your chart, your astro chart, your natal chart, and kind of see where your moon is in relation to your sun. So each of these quadrants actually play a role. So it's actually pretty fun. And I'm super excited also about the new moon meditation. I haven't recorded that yet, but I will be. If you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, please do, so you can opt into the moon and actually receive it. Thanks for joining me today. Be sure to get your chart, because the moon in its essence, once we get in touch with our feelings, feelings are so powerful and they create their own resonance field to where it can wake out and come back in. But just knowing your emotional state of awareness through the moon is actually very healing to our beingness if we tune into it. So, for example, my moon is a Scorpio moon. It's intense. It's in my third house, so it's about learning, it's about sharing. It's not getting stuck in the pettiness and the web of the greater village. So just knowing your moon and where it sits in your chart, kind of, it can assist you to actually grow in your feelings outside of yourself. I feel like the moon is an aspect people, I mean, you want to get in touch with it, and yet your sun, we focus a lot on the sun. But, the moon also has its season. So the moon season, we're coming up on a Gemini moon. So, our thoughts and our ideas are like on the rise. And we get to birth new ideas and new thoughts, new perspectives. Be more optimistic, be more, intuitive, because Gemini's channel both intuitive and logical, kind of Spocky kind of feelings. So just paying attention to where your moon sits in your chart kind of gives you insight into your feeling state of awareness. So how your body reacts to different frequencies and feelings. But that's just my opinion. So again, thanks for joining me today. And as always, I will see you on the other side. InShalla, As-Salamu Alaikum. That means may peace be with you. And it feels great to put on your left hand on your heart, because that's where spirit energy comes in when you say that as well. If you have questions about your feelings, always the left hand on the heart. So anyways, thanks for joining me today. And again, enjoy your weekend. I'm not doing the BlockBuster Show tomorrow. I'm actually going to bring on a guest next Sunday. I have some guest speakers coming in, different friends of mine that I've interviewed on my coffee show. So we're just going to have a private showing in my groups, in my private groups, on different things. So it should be pretty fun. So be sure to look for the post during the week so you know who's coming on board during the week. Anyway, InShalla, Ashe. Thanks for joining me, Stephanie.